The Amazing Undersea Food Web, written by Penny Atchison and Elizabeth Fox. Let me introduce myself. The ocean, where I live, is an enormous buffet table for everything in it and for many land animals, including humans. When you think of the ocean food web, you might think of fierce great white sharks devouring their prey, or enormous blue whales gulping tons of krill. Or you might think of giant stands of seaweed being devoured by everyone like an underwater salad bar. But did you know that more than 90% of all sea creatures end up being eaten by other sea creatures? That means that almost every organism in the ocean ends up getting eaten by another sea creature at some point or other. And almost every sea creature eats other sea creatures. But there is one little organism that almost always gets eaten but does not actually eat anything itself. It is the most microscopic species in the ocean, yet it forms the center of the ocean's food web. Some people might think it's a raw deal to be food for everybody else without getting to eat anybody in return, but I find it to be quite a powerful job. Let me back up and introduce myself properly. Phytoplankton is my name. I'm an algae, which is almost like a very tiny plant. But unlike plants, I have no roots, so I'm not attached to the ground or seafloor. I'm free to float around with the ocean currents. I prefer to remain near the surface of the sea, since I'm quite fond of sunlight, and I can be found in every ocean on Earth. Like plants, I make food through a process called photosynthesis, rather than eating it. I use chlorophyll to capture the sun's energy and use it to convert minerals and nutrients from seawater into food. Just as in plants, chlorophyll makes me green. But I'm so tiny that you can only see the color when there are billions upon billions of us in one place. Fortunately, there are billions upon billions of us. As many as 50,000 phytoplankton can be found in 1 cup of seawater. All that photosynthesis going on helps provide the Earth's atmosphere with about 60% of its oxygen. We are also a good indicator of the ocean's health. Scientists can see large patches of phytoplankton from space. They can get information about the levels of pollution in the water when they see us struggling or dying off. But in my opinion, our most important job is providing the center of the food web for the entire ocean. We feed all ocean life forms directly or indirectly, from the smallest creature to the largest. The food web. Here's how it works. Think about a simple tuna fish sandwich. Tuna are relatively large fish, and they eat smaller fish called mackerel. To make 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds of tuna flesh, the tuna had to eat about 10 kilograms, 22 pounds of mackerel. Those 10 kilograms of mackerel had to eat 100 kilograms, 220 pounds, of an even smaller fish called herring. And those 100 kilograms of herring devoured a full 1,000 kilograms, 2,200 pounds of zooplankton. Zooplankton are microscopic animals. They include tiny animals such as krill, which look like little shrimp, and the larvae and babies of crabs, jellyfish, shrimp, and other fish. To support those 1,000 kilograms of zooplankton, 10,000 kilograms, 22,000 pounds of phytoplankton were eaten. To give you an idea of just how much life I support, I'll take you through the ocean from the surface, where I live, down to the deepest trenches on the ocean floor. Life in the sunlit zone. The euphotic zone, or sunlit zone, is the top level of the ocean. It extends about 200 meters, 660 feet, down from the surface. There's lots of sunlight here, so we phytoplankton, along with ocean plants, love it. Consequently, most of the animal species in the ocean can also be found here. Red and green algae, also known as seaweed, cover much of the shallow ocean floor in the euphotic zone. Enormous giant kelp grow in thick forests, almost like forests on land, and provide shelter for many sea animals. Sea urchins live in the protected waters at the base of the kelp, and sea otters feed on those urchins. Sea otters also wind long strands of kelp around their bodies while they sleep in order to keep from drifting away. Almost all the seafood humans eat comes from the euphotic zone. Clams, mussels, and oysters live on shallow ocean floors. Lobsters and crabs scuttle about in coral reefs and among seaweed beds. Most species of fish, including salmon, tuna, mackerel, cod, and swordfish, stay up in the sunlight where there is plenty to eat and good light for hunting. Though there are squid and octopuses in the deeper zones, most of the ones that humans eat come from the euphotic zone. The euphotic zone is also home to coral reefs, which hold almost a quarter of the ocean's plant and animal species. These fragile and beautiful areas are formed by the accumulation of the skeletons of small animals called coral polyps. They are found in clear tropical waters where there is lots of sunlight. Sea fans, brain coral, clownfish, angelfish, lionfish, moray eels, sharks, shellfish, crabs, and lobsters all make the coral reef a colorful and busy place. Anemone, animals that look like beautiful plants or flowers, catch zooplankton with their stinging tentacles. Jellyfish swarm in massive numbers, attracting the sea turtles that love to eat them. Coral reefs also provide a safe haven for the young of many creatures that will live in the open ocean as adults. Humans love snorkeling and diving in the euphotic zone, especially around coral reefs, and they take thousands of tons of fish, both for food and for pets in tropical aquariums, from these surface waters. Unfortunately, all this human activity, along with pollution, threatens the well-being of coral reefs and other areas in the euphotic zone. Coral polyps are often killed by pollution, boat engines breaking them, or divers stepping on them, and once the corals die, all the other reef life suffers as well. Entire populations of fish can drop dangerously low from overfishing. One non-destructive way to sample ocean life in the euphotic zone is to look into a tide pool. A tide pool is a small pool of water that remains when the tide goes out. You can find mussels, sea stars, urchins, clams, barnacles, and snails. You might even see an octopus. Or you may spot a hermit crab scurrying about in another animal's shell. You don't even have to get wet to see all the life that depends directly or indirectly on me and my fellow phytoplankton. The twilight zone. As you go below the euphotic zone, the water begins to get darker, colder, and heavier. You are now entering the twilight zone. It begins at about 200 meters, 656 feet, and goes to a depth of about 1,000 meters, 3,280 feet. The pressure in this zone would crush a person, but the life forms that live here have adapted to the pressure. The twilight zone, also called the dysphotic zone, doesn't have enough light to support photosynthesis and plant life, but some animals do make their homes here. Others, such as whales, visit from the euphotic zone. Permanent residents include octopuses, squid, and strange-looking fish such as the hatchetfish and the viperfish. The fish that live in this zone often have huge mouths with big curved teeth. Because it is so hard to see, the fish don't hunt. Rather, they simply hold open their fearsome mouths, waiting for something to swim in. Many of them are black or dark red to blend in with the dark water. The famous giant squid also lives in this zone. Until recently, no giant squid had ever been seen alive. The squid's bodies occasionally washed up on shore or were found in the stomachs of sperm whales. Though a few people have seen it at the surface and a few scientists have seen it in the dysphotic zone, the giant squid still remains a mystery. Many animals in this zone depend on a diet of what scientists call marine snow, which is a nice name for dead phytoplankton and zooplankton. When we die, our bodies drift slowly down through the ocean layers like snow falling through the air. So even where we don't live, phytoplankton are eaten. The midnight zone. This totally dark region of the ocean contains 90% of the ocean's water, but almost none of its life. It extends from 1,000 to 5,000 meters, 3,280 to 16,404 feet, and below. The pressure is so great that it can crush almost anything, including most submarines. And the temperature is near freezing. But there is some life in the midnight zone, or aphotic zone, if you look closely. Many of the tiny animals that live here, such as the lanternfish, have little lights running up and down their bodies. The light comes from a special process called bioluminescence. This is the same process that produces light in fireflies. Jellyfish, squid, fish, and even bacteria are bioluminescent in this zone where there is no sunlight. These lights make it possible for animals to see and communicate with each other. These lights also help them find mates or food, and they also make them incredibly beautiful. Some oceanographers divide the midnight zone into two additional zones, the abyssal zone and ocean trenches. The abyssal zone is also totally dark, and it covers much of the ocean floor, including vast plains, mountains, valleys, and canyons. Ocean trenches occur along faults where large plates of the Earth's crust come together. The colliding plates create canyons and cracks of up to 10,000 meters, 32,808 feet deep. You would think that nothing could survive at the bottom of a trench in the darkness, cold, and pressure. But openings at the bottom of the trenches spew hot water and minerals from deep within the earth. Animals living in this zone have taken advantage of the warmth and nutrients. Special kinds of bacteria can use these nutrients in the same way that phytoplankton use sunlight. Tube worms, shrimp, and giant clams can all be found feeding on these bacteria around the openings or chimneys. These chimneys were only recently discovered. Only a few submersibles or submarines have been built strong enough to withstand the enormous pressure at the bottom of a trench. Back on top. So you see, even though phytoplankton are only at the top of the ocean, we're at the center of the food web, supporting all other life in the sea. Whether you enjoy the ocean for the beauty of coral reefs, the mystery of the abyssal zone, or some tasty fish and chips, you have us, phytoplankton, to thank. Enjoy your ocean buffet. Explore more at the library. Ask your librarian for books about the ocean. There are hundreds of specific ocean subjects you can look up, including sharks, shipwrecks, treasure hunting, and hurricanes. Also ask about magazines that have articles and photographs of the ocean. On the Internet. Typing the word ocean into a search engine will most likely give you so many links you won't know where to begin. Many of those links might not be interesting. It's best to decide what you are interested in before you log on. A. In the address window, type www.google.com. B. Then type in the subject you're curious about, such as phytoplankton. C. Read the colored links. Click on one that looks interesting. D. When you want to explore new links, click the back arrow at the top left. E. You can probably think of more ocean topics than you'll ever have time to explore. Choose your favorites and type them into the search window. Try this. Ask your teacher about a possible field trip to the ocean or a nearby aquarium. A good way to convince your teacher is to write a proposal or an explanation of why the trip would be a good idea. Try to come up with a list of fun and interesting things your class or school could see, do, and learn at the ocean or aquarium. You might recommend that the class go on a whale watch, visit a tide pool, or get a glimpse of deep-sea life on display at the aquarium. Have your classmates sign the proposal and give it to your teacher. You might just find yourself on a field trip.